Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There it is, so you don't miss any of our football content this season. It has been, if I might say, fantastic. Crazy weekend. We're going to spend 90% of it on NFL. John Middlekauff, as we do every Sunday, former NFL scout with the Philadelphia Eagles, 3 and Out's his podcast. He joins me every Sunday night. So, I want to just start with the first game of the day, the Jets. So the Minnesota Vikings beat the Jets, was it 23-17? And Jets got off to a really bad start, as they've been prone to do this year, even though those are supposed to be the scripted plays and where you get off to pretty decent starts offensively, they didn't. And I've got reams and reams of notes here. Sam Darnold had a bad pick. There were opportunities. But so already New York media wants to fire Robert Saleh. So let me just defend him. And I don't think he's a great coach. He hasn't proven to be. One, because the general manager whiffed on Zach Wilson and a left tackle, they had to basically desperately give the franchise to the best free agent quarterback they could find, which was Aaron Rodgers. So Aaron had the power to bring in Nat Hackett. I don't think Robert Saleh wanted to. So his GM put him in a situation where he's dealing with a relationship with an OC he wouldn't have hired. I mean, Nat Hackett's, reputation is what it is. We know he's got an impulsive owner. Now, Alan Lazard's had multiple drops today. That's on Aaron. But Hassan Reddick, this defense is good. Somebody finally shut down Minnesota. How good would they be with Hassan Reddick? So I look at Saul and I think, you can blame him, but John, I do this all the time. Are you, as a coach, Matt Eberflus, are you good with your side of the ball? We finally found a defense that slowed down Minnesota today. My take is Saleh is having to overcome GM mistakes, an impulsive owner, and Aaron's age, which he's just not what he used to be. You're kind of smirking. Would you run him out of town, Saleh?
Well, I laugh because only Colin Cowherd and Aaron Rodgers could get me out of bed 6:30 a.m. to watch one of these London games, and I did it, and I did it for you, and I did it for Aaron. And 10 minutes into the game, you're just thinking they're going to get boat raced. I mean, it was just 3 and out, 3 and out. That game against the Patriots, it was hard to deny he had a youthful feel. It turns out the Patriots are awful. In these last 2 weeks, you saw him against Denver, who turns out Denver playoff team, defense. I mean, they're pretty impressive. And then obviously Minnesota, really, really good on defense. He looked really old.
Yeah.
He looked really old and he couldn't move around. He's definitely, whatever's going on with his lower leg. He talked about it coming into the game. He got rolled up, but the magic is gone. I mean, those back shoulder throws, the throw that ended the game, there were the pick six, little fluky. That happens sometimes when you just kind of throw it in the guy. But the other 2 picks, the way the game ends, when has he ever been so off with the wide receiver on that throw? That was really bad. But his other pick, which is a layered throw, which I would say Aaron Rodgers is as good as anyone in the history of the sport, down the seam between 2 defenders, and it looked like a remedial quarterback, what they do. Airmail. I mean, the receiver has no shot. And you're just going, I just don't see it. And the other thing is, how did they get his swag back? And this was when he was younger, pre-Achilles in Green Bay. They started running the ball well.
They have no run game.
You're watching
in
the last 2 games. I mean, I don't think they've accounted for like 70 total yards. And they don't even try. I mean, you're just, at this point in time, 40 years old, the way he was playing today, to ask him to throw it 45-ish times is not a winning formula. And let's face it, Colin. These quarterbacks, and his resume was way better than Russell Wilson and obviously Deshaun Watson, but great quarterbacks never become available. That never happens. The reason Peyton Manning became available, they thought his neck was broken.
Yeah.
Right? Bill Belichick said, listen, you guys all think I'm crazy. I'm shorting a 42-year-old player. It's very rare that Josh Allen in his prime or Lamar changes teams. That's not what happens. So we now have a long list of Russell disaster. Obviously, Deshaun has a chance to be a historic disaster. And this Aaron Rodgers thing, last year, old guy got hurt. Freaky, okay. And this year, you're just seeing him play decent competition, and they just feel overwhelmed. I mean, they really do. But he's not good enough. he's not good enough to mask their issues, like you said, with their offensive coordinator and their personnel.
Yeah, they asked him to throw 54 times, and he's not that player. And the other thing is, I had said this. I always thought Cam Newton wasn't very disciplined mechanically, but I thought he got away with it in his prime. Cam was just an arm thrower. He wouldn't set. Aaron has been able to get away with sometimes floating, flipping, kind of
sometimes I would say the majority of the time.
Right.
Right.
In his prime, he could get away with it. And he just can't anymore.
No.
His mechanics, Cam Newton's mechanics, they're just, that's why that is literally why Brady was good to the end. He was mechanically perfect.
Peyton too, before his arm fell off.
Yep. And Aaron and Cam Newton jump out to me as players that were just sort of so gifted they got away with it. I mean, go back to Aaron's last year in Green Bay. When all your marketing team does is put out fires, they burn out fast, sifting through leads, creating content for infinite channels, endlessly searching for disparate performances, KPIs, all takes a toll. But with HubSpot, you can stop team burnout in its tracks. Plus, your team can achieve their best results without breaking a sweat. With tools like the built-in Breeze AI, pinpoint the best leads possible, capture prospects' attention with click-worthy content, and access all your company's data in one place. No sifting through tabs necessary. It's all waiting for your team in HubSpot. Keep your marketers cool. Make your campaign results hotter than ever. They were 8-9. Aaron, again, in a organization that was young but stable, they lost at home to Detroit, which was 1 year away from being good. Yeah. And now you look at them. Think about this. Denver, with a worse roster and a rookie quarterback, has a better record and has beaten the Jets head-to-head with Bo Nix, who, by the way, I watched today. Again, they're not asking him to do a ton, but athletically, Bo Nix is moving. Bo Nix is picking up. He's moving the chains. That's an average roster that Vegas had at 5.5 wins. So Denver's beaten them in New York, has a better record, won again today, and is actually starting to figure it out offensively. So I think your point is true, is that when you talk about, I think Matt Stafford has kind of, like Aaron, he doesn't move as well, but I think his mechanics are better and he's got a better head coach. But most of these guys not named Brady, John, they age really fast. And Aaron got hit today. He was in pain the last quarter and a half of that football game.
Yeah, it feels this could end pretty ugly. The rest of this year. Obviously, they'll still win some games. They got players. I don't view them as like a 4 or 5 win team, but it could be a bumpy 7 to 8 win ride. And the way he looks relative to what he's been, you talked about this a lot leading into the season, where he would rank in the AFC, the overall landscape of the quarterbacks. And, a lot of people freak out when you say, hey, 7th, 8th, 9th guy, give or take, somewhere in that region. The last 2 weeks, he hasn't sniffed being a top 20 quarterback. Obviously, last week, he even admitted he was atrocious. And today, you just see his physical limitations. He's not able to move like he once did. Beside Garrett Wilson, they're so Lazard dependent. And when they're not running the ball, he can't just go. It was really glaring today because, again, we had a football game start for us at 6:30 in the morning. So right when the 10 a.m. game starts, and you just go from that, because that basically ran right up till 10.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it's Lamar and Joe Burrow. And you go, for a long period of time, these guys have been good for a while now too, but a couple years ago, Aaron was ahead of them, winning MVPs or right there with them, the superstars of the league. And then you're watching those two guys and you just witnessed Aaron. You're like, he feels like, I didn't watch this, but Willie Mays on the Mets or something. Now, his version of it. And it's just, I don't think that you can circumvent his age if you can't run the ball, because his game was very predicated on him moving around. And there's a couple times I think he knows, like, I can't get away like I used to. He kind of just plops. And it was he just looks old. He looks weathered, Colin. He looks weathered.
What I think really helps Robert Saleh and saves his job for the time being is they don't have a strong offensive coordinator. If they did, I think Woody Johnson, if they lost to Buffalo, would make a move. I really do. He's that impulsive. But they don't have a great coordinator.
Is that who they play this upcoming week, Buffalo?
I think it's Buffalo's on the schedule. So their schedule gets really tough. The other thing is that, and I mean, they targeted Garrett Wilson 22 times today. They're like the Cowboys. If CeeDee Lamb or Garrett Wilson twisted an ankle, they don't have an offense.
No.
They're totally dependent. That's why the Devontae Adams rumors make sense. But, you know, when you start looking at the Jets, and I said this week, Yankees, Mets in the playoffs, Knicks season starting. This is the first viable championship team. So much of this franchise historically has been about relevance. And it's like I always call them the low self-esteem sports franchises. You know, Cleveland gets desperate. Deshaun Watson's contract. You know, we've seen NBA franchises like this. The Jets, Mets historically, the Yankees had a big signing. We have to have one. This organization now, you start looking at it, I think they have to draft a quarterback in the AFC. Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow, CJ Stroud, Justin Herbert. You know, it was, okay, let's get Aaron some help next year. They have to draft a quarterback. There's no question they have to draft a quarterback.
Well, I understand the GM and the coach have to be realizing the light at the end of the tunnel. If they win 7-8 games, they're all going to get fired. But
yeah,
you cannot trade a high pick for Devontae Adams. I think that's malpractice in the long-term landscape of this operation. Because even if you add Devontae Adams, okay, you're still probably a one-and-done playoff team at best, maybe winning a game. If this is the version of the quarterback, right? He is not a top 10 quarterback. So, you know, I don't know if you saw the report today that Mark Davis, you know, most of these teams, it's like, listen, I hire my GM, you do what's best for the organization. Mark Davis, like, we will not take anything less than a second round pick, which I understand where he's coming from, but that kind of shows you the dysfunction of the Raiders. He's the one making the call on the compensation, but maybe the Jets just kind of give in. Well, they're not going to be a top 5 drafting team, right? They're still going to win games. So you're not drafting high enough to probably get the premium guy, which is already a pretty questionable quarterback draft. So you're more likely to be where they just were, 12 to 15. So giving up that second round pick or 2 third-round picks or whatever, that's valuable, you know, capital to move up. So now that's the problem though. So internally, these guys are fighting for their lives because they can just see getting fired coming right down, you know, the railroad tracks at them. So maybe they're like, screw it, take the pick, Mark. And if I'm the Raiders and I could get the Jets pick, that seems pretty crazy to me. And I also think if you're Devontae Adams, you know, you go with Aaron, it's like, is he going to retire after this year? It feels, this is the problem about how much limited equity the franchise had together, that once you go through a little adversity, like the Niners right now are in shambles. But at the end of the day, Fred, George Kittle, Trent Williams, all these guys have played together for so long. And the Patriots or the Chiefs, when they go through bumpy roads, like sometimes it's like, hey, guys, we've been doing this for a while. Everyone with the Jets, like, I just got here. You just got here. We've played 4 games with Aaron total, right? It's just, it feels like a ticking time bomb because of this situation hanging over the head with the executive and the coach. And then Aaron's age. And he's just kind of, I don't want to say he's pouty, but he's just, his body language is not great right now.
Yeah. So Viking fans, I know you're upset with us because we're talking about the New York Jets, but they're in crisis. The Vikings now are undefeated. They had a pretty bumpy second half. Sam Darnold did have one of his kind of classic reckless interceptions, but I will say this, he mostly managed the game. Even good. I mean, Kansas City's had multiple bad halves, and Mahomes has had multiple horrible picks. Today, Stafford had another one. Aaron had several. So Darnold is allowed to have some, you know, he throws the ball down the field. Sam has receivers that can make plays. I thought overall Minnesota really controlled the game in the first half, got into Aaron's head, and then it was just holding on. I kind of feel like that way with the New York Giants, even though we thought the game was in doubt. I feel like it was the Giants' day. Their O-line was just controlling Seattle's injury-plagued D-line. So Minnesota's undefeated. I don't take anything negative. You're not going to run through this league. I mean, good God, Bama got beat by Vandy. You're not going to run through this league and not have really bad halves. So I don't have any take on Minnesota. They won.
That's an impressive win. So, to me, you're not going to beat everyone going up 28-0 in the first quarter. That wasn't a sustainable model. So to me, to win a game like this, where you did have the lead the whole time, but they were kind of coming back and your defense hold serve. And like you said, Sam, like he didn't crumble. Today would have been a moment in
Yep.
previous years where maybe he fumbles and throws 2 other picks and it's just, the Jets win because they get handed a victory by Sam Darnold. And that did not happen today.